Welcome to Save What You Love. I'm Mark Titus. Today, I get the chance to hang out with Chad Brown. This is a guy that I found out through my fishing circles. He is a sport fisherman extraordinaire. He's a guide. More importantly, he is a person that is showing us the way forward on how to heal ourselves in the wild. And how does he know this? Because he's done it himself. Chad has been to the very bottom where a human being can go, and now he's rising to the top by becoming a mentor to young people, to BIPOC folks that don't ordinarily get into the outdoors to experience the wild, and to folks that are underrepresented. So excited to bring Chad Brown to you today. Enjoy the episode.
How do you say what you love when the world is burning down? How do you say what you love and pushes come to shove? How do you say what you love when things are upside down? How do you say what you love when times are getting tough?
Chad Brown, welcome to Save What You Love. First off, I want to just thank you for your service, sir. It is such a privilege to have you on this show. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm coming out of Portland, Oregon right now. Yeah, the weather's a little gloomy. We're out of the ice age.
Yeah, you weathered a little bit. Speaking of, you weathered a little bit of a turbulent storm here the last 10 days or so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was pretty tough. I think it caught a lot of folks off guard, and I guess we are up in the north, and we're used to cold weather, but I think this time it kind of caught everybody off guard. It cut off lights, and cell phones went out. I mean, it was crazy. We're here though. Yeah.
Yeah. For all of you who don't know, we've been working on this for several days to put this program together to bring to you. Chad was out of internet service for a while, and we go to every length to make sure that take care of you here at Save What You Love.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, just wanted to start out for those folks not in the fishing community or not in the activist community or not in the military community. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to love the things that mean so much to you?
Well, when we first come out of school or step into the big world of college, we graduate, we put that short-term list and that long-term goal list together, and we are so charged on exactly on what we want to do in life. Our paths are straight, but we never take an account of how crooked those paths can be. And some of us still walks that path, and some of us, kind of got thrown to the left and thrown to the right a couple times, and we had to figure things out along the way. And wherever we fall at, the cards fall, then that's where we end up at, And I think, with that saying is, I went into the military and with this intention on, wanting to go to school in the art, et cetera, and, I didn't know what I was going to step into when I got into the fleet, when I graduated from boot camp and got into the fleet, into the Navy. I can't say it was the right time or perfect time, but when I got into the fleet, it was kind of like right at the time when there's a storm was happening, the second phase of that, and then Operation Restore Hope, Somalia, and then there was just so much stuff that was happening all over the place. And I was, dropped into many different places to experience, in theater, in war, and, I've experienced a lot, seen a lot. My time in the Navy was like 14 months of, 14 countries, within a short stint of my time in the Navy. And the longest I stayed in the United States was like 4 months of my entire Navy enlistment, basically, And so, but I didn't realize what I guess I knew what I was, I guess you could say I got exposed, but I didn't realize how much a toll of that exposure took on me when I got out. And so as I'm moving forward through life and going back to college, using my GI Bill, um, you know, it was slowly but surely I started seeing these weird things happening with my body and with my mind, and I couldn't really place it. And so the further I've moved forward in my life, the more of that stuff started to come out. And then, I end up fighting this all the way through graduate school. And then coming out is right when I really started to fight, when I started to really slowly unravel. And the more I unraveled, the more that I really didn't have a hold on to my own mind, mental side, and then that's when it's basically I started to realize, through a lot of help and coming to Portland, Oregon, and at the VA, identifying and realizing that I was fighting with PTSD, and so I got officially diagnosed 50% mentally disabled. And through that whole process, I found myself homeless. Found myself in the lines giving blood for $20 for, a pint, whatever, a quart. And I was on a routine and that was my only way of living and trying to get money. And then a person put a rod in my hand and took me to the river and said, "This is where I used to come fish." And I said, "Well, how do you get into it?" And that was a day that I was like really, really drugged up on heavy, heavy medications. And so when I, fought through that piece and that person showed me what to do, I hooked in on my, fish. It was a really small jack salmon, and I was hooting and hollering all over the place. I was hooting and hollering and trying to, yeah, I didn't even realize like what I even done. Honestly, I was just happy at that moment. I was just really, really happy, but what was really important was I was able to just really key in on the air that brushed across my face that I haven't felt in years, and I was really able to keen on the colors, the greenery, and that was around me on the riverbank, and just looking at those things and just everything like came into focus to me. And that was when I felt like I was alive, and it was really weird because all that time that I've been fighting with my PTSD and popping all these medications, it was like I was like a walking zombie, and I was just moving through with no emotion, no feeling, or nothing like that. And so, I ended up moving forward, and there was a moment that I did find myself on the river about to take my life. I attempted suicide, and um, ended up into the VA hospital and did like almost 7 days in the suicide watch to prove to the docs that I wasn't gonna hurt myself. And so moving forward, I ended up developing a really good strong community on the water, in the outdoors. That community was a balance between hunters and anglers and conservation folks. It was a whole new community to me, and they each one of them took me underneath their wing, and they taught me new way of looking at nature, new way of looking at the fish that I chase all the time, a new way of understanding the river and how to read the river. It was just me learning all over again, and these are just new tools that was given to me, and those tools really became kind of like my medicine, that connection back to nature. And I went back to the VA and start talking to the docs about what fly fishing was doing for me in this new community. And so really they kind of wrote a prescription, basically was to fish more. And if you continue to fish more, we'll slowly wean you off your medications, and so that was kind of like my deal handshake with the VA. And I continued to fish more. And the more I did, they winged me off. And the more they winged me off, the more I started to feel like I was alive, and I started to move forward through my life. And I got good at fly fishing, started teaching, started, getting stronger. And one day I got to a point in my life where I was just like, I'm ready to get back into society. I'm ready to do something, ready to make a difference. I want to make a change. But I was like, this time I I don't want to really just go and work and find a job. I want to do something with a purpose. Fly fishing gave me this purpose, and so I started to think about how could I continue on with this purpose and how nature, supported me. And that was when I was standing on the river waist deep with, on the Clackamas River. And there's things like, well, Soul River. And that was the beginning of my nonprofit. I was like trying to figure out a name for a new nonprofit. And, it's like Soul River. Soul River is blah, 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 blah. I was like brainstorming in my head while I was in the water fishing. And I finally came to it and I said, Soul River runs deep, and it runs deep within all of us. Every one of us has a way to connect to the river, and whatever we are going through, it doesn't matter how deep it is, the river has a way of helping us get through our process. And so I ended up with Soul River Runs Deep, and that became my entry back into society, my walk in connecting youth and veterans and bringing them together on the water, basically, to serve one another.
Everything you're saying resonates with me, and the name of your foundation, your first org, was what drew me to you in the first place. It was a well-chosen name. I just instantly identified with Soul River Runs Deep, and I, of course, identify with an emergence back into life after some trauma as a person in recovery.
Yeah.
And, of course, identify with the outdoor, proclivity for fishing and standing in rivers. And we're going to dive into Soul River and your newest venture, Love is King, in detail and in depth here in just a minute. But I wanted to give a little bit more backdrop of another part of you, which is your artistic integrity and your artistic vision. You've done work with hip hop artists. You've done work on the streets of New York.
Yeah.
You've done all kinds of really beautiful portraiture and, things in urban settings and with style and fashion. In fact, you have a quote here that says, "Something special happens at the convergence of outdoor lifestyle and design." So
You've done your research.
I'd love to know, the outdoor part. You've done all this really cool work with amazing artists and folks out there in the world, in the urban world. Why wild? Why portraits and landscapes? How do you bring together your eye for style, love of nature, and production into the work that you do? I know we're going to dig into the soul work here in just a little bit, but I'm super curious just about the aesthetics as an artist that you bring to this.
Yeah, I think, this is a whole long, deeper conversation, and I really appreciate you doing your research on that, and I thank you for tapping into that. Those are the type of interviews or type of things that actually gets overlooked. Everybody want to focus on Soul River, and so, but yeah, and I've always kind of kept it a little separate, but I guess it's starting to kind of clash too. But my background as a creative professional is, I did a lot of time in New York, as you said, and I had some really awesome opportunities that I was able to jump at and take advantage and run with, as a photographer, designer, creative director. And art really speaks to my soul, and it's right up there in the same level as my new found love, which is fly fishing, that got me out. But, over a course of time moving forward with my organization, part of that got left behind, and it was me running this organization, and in the spirit of my second passion of fly fishing, in the spirit of healing and connecting people back to the river. But there's also a piece of me that was like left behind as well, which was how nature fed me creatively and the artistic piece of that. And so I needed to try to find a way to how to merge my work as an artist, creative, professional into what I'm doing. And it took me a while to figure that out because my camera was getting dusty, and my sketchbook was getting dusty and everything, and so what I started to see is instead of me, because a lot of my work does come from the fashion world and hip hop and runway, but I'm not in that world. But what I am good at and where my skill set lies is not just pitching as a creative director, conceptually coming up with ideas, but I know how to execute things and I know how to get behind my lens and also tell that story. And I felt like the better place for where I'm at right now is to use my talent and my lens and insert myself into marginalized communities, indigenous communities that doesn't speak for each other, et cetera, and then be able to use that to elevate that, give it a platform and elevate those voices up. And so I stepped out of that creative world where like the money, the money was once there, but this is all passion driven, but this is also where my love as a creative professional, and this is another way that I could be able to also find healing through being a creative professional through my lens and help tell this story from a very creative conceptual place in which I was starting to do with a lot of my exhibition work, with the Arctic, witching people, et cetera, veterans, but really approaching it in a really unique position to shine light on something that does not have enough light to be shined on, if that makes sense. I'm already in the mix with youth and veterans. I'm already in the spaces. I'm on our wildlands. I'm on the rivers. And being able to look through my lens with a more of a story approach and being able to capture the smaller things or capture the impact of what's happening environmentally and flip that into a really interesting story conceptually that has the ability to transcend itself across the environmental world back into the urban world, because my whole goal is to really embrace the folks not really in the conservation world, but really embrace people in the urban world. I have this idea where it's like if we're going to practice conservation, we need to stop talking to one another, our preaching to choir, and start advocating and stepping out and getting into uncomfortable spaces and bring them into the fold and share that space where we can create one army in that conservation space. We need a bigger army. And so, with my past work was all centered around, yes, environmental, but the way we positioned that was more straddling from the environmental world into urban world communities and using story how to capture that audience and bring them in, inspire them about the needs and what's happening environmentally, what's happening with the indigenous people, et cetera. And we went inspired through story. Guess what? We have a future ambassador, a future champion, right? That champions go, wow, how can I be more of service? What can I do now? I get it, et cetera. But we just told this story and brought them in. And so now we're creating a stronger army together, And so, I hope I answered your question.
Oh, absolutely. I was talking to David James Duncan last week. He's on the current episode of the podcast, and we talked about this idea of convergence and murmurations of birds, when birds all turn in flight at the same time. And I feel like our brains are plugged into the same server. I mean, this is something that, and I know there's a lot of you listening right now that are having these same sort of ideas about how do I turn my life into something that is driven by purpose, that is driven to be of service, that what can I use my talents for? And Chad, that's exactly what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
It makes all the sense in the world to me. And I think, for some time, I've had the same idea that we have a lot of folks in our immediate circles, whether that's the environmental circle or the sportsmen and women's circle, that are speaking our same language. We do have to reach out because, as you say, when you create an experience for somebody, whether that's through your visual art or you're taking a kid out through Soul River, which we'll get into, or it's rehabilitating a veteran who's dealing with PTSD, that experience will help that murmuration, that convergence with one more
Yeah.
person. So it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
And I think you explain that eloquently and beautifully. Before we dive into Soul River, we're close to the water here. I want to talk about living with trauma. And you touched on that here a minute ago. You're very open about your mental health, and I absolutely admire that and try to emulate that. I've also been public about my own mental health and story of addiction and recovery. And it takes courage. It takes a decision to put yourself out into the world to do that.
Right.
I have not come close to a suicide attempt, but I have a lot of friends who have. And I'm curious from your perspective and from one person who's found my bottom, and I know you found yours. What do you offer for those who are experiencing trauma in their mental health, both in the immediate and in long-term recovery, from your point of view and from the journey you've been on?
Wow. Almost the immediate. Well, it's hard for me to throw out an offer or an idea, an immediate, because it's such a dark place.
Yes.
And I don't have an answer for that other than whatever buoy that's in front of you that you can hold on to. You need to hold on to it. And rather if you're a believer or non-believer, you need to hold on to it and lean into whoever that person is that's trying to reach out and help you. I think it's such a dark place where it becomes your personal battle, and you're gonna have to learn how to fight really, really hard. You're just gonna have to just fight hard and don't give up, don't throw in that towel. And I think what happened to me, that was the attempted suicide. I think and I know it played a role with that, was me having just so much medication inside my system that it made everything foggy for me, and I couldn't make decisions. So I was under influence of a lot of heavy medication, and so it's even hard to. So when I look back at that and just thinking about where other people may be at right now, veteran and non-veteran, that's hard to navigate. It's just hard to really navigate. The best thing I would say is you just gonna have to fight really, really hard, and whatever that's positive around you at that time, hold on to it as your buoy, and hold on to it, and keep fighting. The long term, I can speak more to that. Is the long term is the offering is what you can do and what helps is that long term is that when you punch through that darkness, the key to that long term is aligning your life with the right people that's going to support you, number one. Also changing your habits, even down to how you eat. Everything relates to the mental illness of whatever that we're fighting with, etc. So if you consume a lot of salt drinks and a lot of sweets, that stuff right there is another form of negative toxic medicine stuff that you're injecting back into your system that your body does not need. Your body needs the right type of food, and the right type of liquids, etc., nourishments and everything for your mind to be able to operate, be able to breathe, be able to function. And so it takes a lot of discipline of what I'm talking about. But that future, moving forward, that long term is not just going through the process and dealing with your therapy, et cetera, but it's going to call you to be more disciplined to clean up your space of where you lay your head at, number one. And cleaning up your space, that means taking out the negative, taking out the negative that you eat, taking out the negative that's around you, et cetera, and aligning yourself up with the right positive connecting pieces, changing your negative habits into positive habits. It's a long-term process of changing the way you operate through that whole process in order to maintain your sanity and to move forward. If I have to do that myself. I constantly have to do it, and also to even to this day, I even talk about myself. Every week I'm in therapy. Every week I'm in acupuncture therapy, and every week I'm in massage therapy. I have to maintain what I eat as far as food. I eat a lot of vegetables. I drink a lot of water. I don't mess with coffee because coffee does have a negative influence onto mental illness. And I try to do everything natural. And then if I ever find myself in my head down, you know what? I have a certain group of people who I lean into, which is my community that can help it. So I'm using a lot of tools around me every day in order to function and operate. We can never find a healing place, but this is our process to sustain ourselves, to keep on going and remain kind of like in this flow of pursuing the healing piece. And pursuing a healing piece is you being able to operate and function, right? Being able to operate and do the right thing and make the right decisions and stay healthy. Being able to understand what do you call it? Self-care means. Really taking the time and understanding what self-care means and how you have to apply self-care into your daily task of what you're trying to do every day. The way I look at it is dealing with mental illness, depression, anxiety, PTSD, etc. It's a responsibility that you have to take upon yourself. When you get through that dark side, to sustain that, you have to be able to add these kind of pieces into your life to sustain yourself on the long-term haul for the rest of the time you are on this planet, basically. If you don't do that, you will have some failures along the way. Yeah, you have some failures on that. That's really what will happen. Yeah, I hope that's the best. I don't, I mean, that's what I know and what I've learned, and that's how I practice my life. Basically. But yeah.
Absolutely. And to be clear, I am not a mental health professional, and I'm pretty sure you're not either. We're certainly not offering a diagnosis or a regimen necessarily, but we will link to folks if you are experiencing mental trauma or having suicidal thoughts. We'll link to some resources in our show notes here on the website. And I will offer this, though, that I completely agree with you on changing your life. And I found when I finally was able to surrender to the disease that I have in alcoholism, that I could then finally move forward. And as the best person in our family, hands down, with a family vote, it was my mom's cousin, Father John, back from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And he said to me, actually on my wedding day. He was at Venka and my wedding, and he said, "Salvator ambulando," which means it is solved by walking. So keep walking, ask for help, and then do those things in your daily regimen, like you were talking about, Chad. I hear you on all of that.
Yeah.
So
For sure.
we're now, without further ado, I'm so excited to get into SWYL River. My bottom led me to Film the Wild. Your bottom led you to launching SWYL River. What exactly is it, and why do you focus on youth? Why did that come to you as a means to be of service with the talents and the gifts that you're given?
Well, SWYL River, it's SWYL River is a way of finding space for yourself to unravel and reconnect to nature and community. It's a way for souls to come together that are fighting on many different levels, or whatever they're fighting for. They can be able to come together and serve one another, and those souls are youth and veterans of what I focus on. Why? I'm a veteran that suffers from PTSD, and me having an opportunity, a second opportunity to launch this organization. I look back on what nature has done for me, and I feel that nature can do the same for many more other vets out there that are fighting as well. Youth, really the main reason why, focusing on youth, because I was that youth and I come from a broken home. I was also into gangs, and had a really hard time growing up. And my mother not gave me, but she put me into the Big Brother and Big Sister program. And my big brother, ironically, my big brother happened to be the captain of the police department in Austin, Texas. And so I will never forget him. His name was
I'll keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, exactly. And so he became my big brother. And so we did a lot of things together, and he would come and pick me up. And he did a scare tactic on me one day. I remember it clearly. He took me to the Austin Police Department and took me down to the jail cell and had me done fingerprints. I'd done all my fingerprints right in front of him and didn't know. And then he took me down to one of the jails and put me in the jail. And then he locked me up and he walked away, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, where are you going? And I was freaking out and stuff like that. But he came back and
check, please.
Exactly. And he talked to me and he says, so, he was like, yeah, well, I want you to understand that, we have two choices, two options in our lives, and you have every opportunity to make the best life that you want to make, or you have an opportunity to make another choice. And you make this choice of going down this route here. This is where you may end up at. A lot of people do end up here, and it's not a place where I want to see you. So I want you to see, like, this is what happens when you make the wrong choice in life, etc. This is what happens if you decide that you disrespect your parents, you disrespect elders, that kind of stuff. So he had this whole long conversation with me, and I was already in trouble. I was running gangs and all this kind of stuff, and but it made an impact on my life. It definitely made an impact, on my life, and and I understand the importance of leadership and guardian, our mentorship. I understand why, and it's really, really needed in our communities, especially in broken home families. The mother, she does the best that she can do. And I was raised by a single, woman, and my mom was awesome. She had to wear two hats, but there's also things when, young boys and young girls can be able to also have a balance of support of a big brother, big sister type of relationship, with a mentor or someone that makes a big difference. It weighs out the raising of children, basically. That's like an extension of community, that helps supports the family. And so when I look back and look at the youth, especially the inner city youth and what's going on, and not a lot of the inner city kids, the youth of color, has these various opportunities to be able to break away and relax in nature. The mom and dad is working really hard, and some of them are coming from broken homes, and some of them are actually raising their own selves up. And so there's really no time to actually know what recreation is about. There's that time is not there. And so looking at Soul River, that I was just like, well, this is what I'm going to do. My march now is just I'm going to reach out to inner city kids. I'm going to work with veterans, use veterans as a way of bringing their leadership into that space. They're already a natural DNA leader automatically, and connecting with our youth. And you know what? You put these two together, by default, that youth basically jolts that veteran as a wake up of the fact that, oh, I remember who I am. I'm a leader. It gives them purpose. And that veteran injects that leadership like a big brother or big sister. And that youth basically gets an opportunity to get that big brother and big sister on board, and they become that youth community, hands down, period. That community is that connecting family, But yeah.
Can you paint me a picture of a successful outing, or one that's memorable for you, just so we can get in our mind's eye what this kind of looks like?
A successful outing for me is when I'm able to witness the changing of life on the river in real time between youth and veterans. It's not really about anything else other than there's a journey that comes into play, because we go to very far off places of wild lands and fresh water. But really,
Can you give us a couple examples of some of the places you go to?
Some of those places that I go to, or some of the places that the organization goes to, is like the Arctic Wildlife Refuge. We have been down to the Florida Everglades, Utah, Navajo land, and we've done some deployments down to Mexico on the Gila River. We're pretty much all over the place. Yeah.
Incredible. And it sounds like this is something that is reciprocal, that the vets are getting just as much out of this as the young people are.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the things that work the best. I found myself when I'm fortunate enough to be in mentorship positions, either receiving or giving mentorship, that it is a reciprocal thing.
Yeah.
I also found and I encourage everybody out there to look up soulriver.org and check out the Soul River Code. There are multiple examples here that I absolutely intonate come from your military background.
Yeah.
Stuff like I serve my community and my team with honor and integrity. Absolutely. I hold myself and my gear to the highest state of readiness. And I'd love for you all to read this, but the one that really stood out to me the most in this light is I lead by example.
Yeah.
And that to me suggests not just I'm receiving something in this deal, but there's an expectation that I'm going to take something from this and I'm going to contribute to the rest of the world through this experience. Is that true?
That's very true. That whole lead by example is, you summed it up really, really well. It's definitely, it's kind of like the mindset of veterans, and there's, it's, there's no such thing of throwing in the towel from a veteran standpoint. We're gonna,
Mhm.
you give us a mission, we're gonna, we may we'll fall through with it, but our process, it may come back with duct tape or whatever, but we will follow through and we'll find a way, and I think that's the mindset of like, you never give up, you follow through with what you say you're going to do, whatever that mission
Mm.
is. And that mission is leading these youths and following through with your leadership and experience to instill into these youth. Um, and also along with that is the respect that we carry for our community and the remembrance of why we signed that dotted line to join the military, and so there's a lot of deep respect, a lot of honor, intertwined with that leadership. And it's our opportunity to get these youth, to see what we represent, and then in exchange to where these youth allow us to instill in them our leadership. And it's many gifts because they're getting gifts from all over the place, and when I mean gifts, it's like, I mean, like, in the military, you got men and women from all over the United States, come from all over the place, and with many different experiences. So you drop 12 veterans, each veteran, served in the war or not, they have a phenomenal amount of deep type of leadership that's very unique and very different compared to another veteran, and so these youth are in the mix of 12 veterans that is going to get receive so much intense styles of different leadership, a different community, a support system, a different type of confidence build. When we got young ladies in the mix, they get an opportunity to take on different ways and layers from women leaders who are veterans, right? These women veterans have
Cool.
done so much and fought, and from their identity, their gender, to them leading troops. I mean, it's on so many different levels. So these young girls, they get these gifts, these small little gifts, right? And that each veteran's giving them, and it builds them up, and you see that, and that's the change, and that's when you start seeing that transformational change on the water in nature between that veteran, that youth. You see it, you see it clearly. There's a shift that happens, and it's pretty, it's a miracle. It's beautiful, and I think that's really what gets me going and gets me back on the water when I'm doing deployments. Is that gets me going. Period. But yeah.
We're going to shift into Love is King here in a moment, but just to kind of put a cap on this, I was just going to lead into that kind of experience of transformation. I was just going to ask you about that when you brought it up. I made the haphazard error of trying to instruct my wife in the fine art of fly fishing. Spouses should not teach spouses how to fly fish.
I agree.
Thankfully, my dear friend Dave McCoy stepped in and saved the day and gave Venka a fly fishing lesson a couple weekends ago, and it went great. Imagine that. So I guess the way I'm framing this is that it's not the easiest thing mechanically, and especially if you're a young person and you're coming from maybe some trauma at home and you're bringing something to the river with you. All the more so, what does that transformation look like to you? Can you maybe paint that picture for us when there's a breakthrough and that young person gets the way that the mechanics of fly fishing work for just a second, and God forbid actually catches a fish and does that in the presence of natural leaders and mentors? What does that look like to you? What's that satisfaction like for you?
That's satisfaction, I would say, to me, is seeing my circle closed again. Like, how we can walk through life and feeling like incomplete on certain,
Hmm.
whatever that we're getting involved with, or what we're doing. That gives me a complete circle, um, that a feeling of being complete. You know,
Amazing.
yeah, it also opens up a new circle, and,
Hmm.
and it opens up a new circle, but that new circle is now starting with now we got work to do. And that
Yeah.
work is how do we sustain um, that passion of that young person? How do we uh, feed the passion and feed the desire and that awe of that young person to keep that young person in line and in focus? And that comes into play. So now it's like, because they're hungry, they are young advocates, they're excited. And so it's also our job is to keep them excited, and by giving them more opportunity or showing them opportunity of where they can apply their excitement. And that's when we start helping them connect the dots to um, jobs, career paths that they can take. And because our ultimate goal from a veteran standpoint is really raising them up into future leaders for tomorrow in our conservation world. And if we can, you know, get them up to speed where they even go to college. Number one, going to college is great. I mean, that's like ultimate. That's awesome, and not every kid is made for that. And of course, it may just be an intern or something. But if we get them going in that direction, that's what we're there for. But if it goes further and it's something that they go into conservation world, that's even sweeter. But we don't. I think we at Soul River, we don't really. We're not picky. We're just interested in making sure that the youth are always safe and moving forward in their lives, and we try to put the careers in front of them where they can see what they like to maybe pursue or not pursue. But the bottom line is that is where the work gets put in it reopens, that circle reopens, and so it's more about career path and leadership and sustaining that interest and showing how they can take their passion and grow with that, basically. But yeah.
Soul River is beautiful. Thank you, Chad. We will link to that in our show notes. You have another venture, a new venture. It's called Love is King. And I'm going to read from your mission statement here. It goes like this. We're on a mission to activate, inspire, and empower a humanitarian movement that will mobilize citizens of all colors to carry out our humanitarian obligation, that will raise our collective consciousness, educate, and help facilitate conflict resolution through love, empathy, respect, and a true sense of personal responsibility without discrimination. And it ultimately boils down to this one statement for me: the freedom to roam in nature as a basic human right. I think that is brilliant.
Thank you.
And so I would love to hear from you, and I know we'd all love to hear, how did you come up with this vision? What does it entail? And how are you moving forward?
Well, you know what? I've always, I guess you could say, it started out like when I'm speaking, with different folks and stuff. One of the things that brought came um, to the forefront through a buddy partner of mine, friend, who is now a board member, basically. But he kind of pulled it out, because a lot of times when I'm speaking, I always end with "Love is King," and I say that a lot, randomly, and it's kind of my way of ending my conversation. Um, but to go deeper with that, when I was young, my father and my mom, they would read to me a lot, and they would keep books by my bed and stuff. And a lot of Martin Luther King books. And, and I think my subconscious went there as soon as my buddy brought that into the forefront. Love is King. And I started thinking about that, and it goes deeper because the fact that it does come from Martin Luther King's the way he speaks and what he stands for, and and going off of the things that I'm witnessing, the things I'm seeing today, and the things that has happened to me as an African American man slash veteran in the outdoors, because I had my share of racism and hate and crime done to me. I think it got to a boiling point to where I felt like the main thing that we're missing in our society is loving one another. But yet
Hmm.
it's that simple, but it's just that complex. And and there's a lot of pain on both ends, of the spectrum here. Um, we never, as a society, stopped to really um, have a conversation or have an apology, have a listen instead of speaking out. We never did that to each other, and we're slowly starting to try to do that, but with the way things are so much in a boiling point that it hurts on both ends. And we go to war, we still haven't solved the problem, and we've been in many wars and never really solved the problem. What comes out of war is pain, loss, guilt, mental, you know, whatever you want to call that, just destruction on both ends. It's the same thing what we do to ourselves, even on our daily tasks in our own society, in our own lives, in our own communities. Um, and really, the most simplest form that can weave us together and bring us together is the act of love for one another. And um, and it's something that's heavily missed in today's society. And the love I'm talking about is, again, it's Martin Luther King. He done it really well, and he lived his life like this. Is the love of a warrior. I'm not talking about the love in a family as a husband or a wife, partner, or in a relationship. I'm talking about the love of a warrior, the ethos love of a warrior. And what I mean by that is you are willing to step up for someone that can't speak for themselves. And you're willing to step into a place that's going to challenge you, that's going to make you feel that uncomfortable, that's going to make you even stutter step of even thinking about moving forward, because the fact that it will probably either endanger you or cripple you or hinder you or take whatever away that you have worked for in your life, but is asking you to step up for this person here. That's the love that I'm talking about. And it goes so deep. And that's the deepness of the love of what is needed in our community. It's stepping in and standing up for not what you believe, but stepping in and standing up for others to help them be able to pull themselves up and step in and create equal, fair opportunity space for healing. And we need more of that. That's kind of like where Love is King was all about, where the deeperness of me, of formulating this idea, this concept is, we need, this is a platform of action. It's not a platform to study diversity, equity, inclusion, or JETI or anything. Those are needed. Yes, that's not a platform. This is a platform to step up on an actionable platform if you're looking to step in and put action to your heart to help others and making the outdoors safe, making the outdoors accessible to BIPOC communities, elderly, LGBTQ communities, including even women who are just by themselves. You find women that are afraid to walk down a trail by themselves, but only with the group. You have BIPOC communities that will only stay with their groups, but not venture out. And the ones you do find that stay with the venture out are the ones that are really well seasoned in the outdoors, like myself. But that's very, very little compared to the majority of masses of urban communities. There's a problem. And that problem is a shared fear across the entire platform that nobody's not talking about and not willing to take the sit down and listen to what that fear is or what that person's dealing with, you know? And so that's Love is King. The Love is King is about making a bias-free space in the outdoors where people in all walks of life to be able to be themselves and feel free to roam in nature without the hate, the bigotry, the racism, and the ignorance, because it's there. But we need to also make sure that we can eliminate that, the best way possible for that young person or that woman to feel comfortable to roam in nature, And so, but yeah, that's Love is King. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is a shared invitation for vulnerability and empathy.
Yeah.
And I can tell you in my own life, when the Me Too movement really broke wide open, it just happened to be, it was coincidental. I was in a gender equality workshop, and one of these exercises, we did some visualization, and I visualized my wife and my mom and my aunt and some of my best friends that are women in some of these compromised situations. And for the first time had this breakthrough about this is so deeply personal, and we are living in such seemingly similar but utterly different worlds just by the difference in our sex or our race or the color of our skin.
Absolutely.
We're all the same race.
Yeah.
But and I wept. I broke down and just wept, just imagining like my mom or my wife going through those situations that were so hurtful. And it was the same thing. And I got to say, Chad, with you, I know that you were out at least one time, and your rig had gotten broken into, and it was awful. And I was visualizing the same thing, and it hurt. And just over the weekend here, I went out fishing myself. I went South Puget Sound fishing for sea run cutthroats, and tried a new spot. It was kind of off the grid, or my grid anyway. And I got into fish, and I lost all sense of time. It was bliss. It was amazing. But I had an instance where I turned my head over my shoulder at one point, and there was a guy on the beach, and he was clearly very, very high. And if I had to guess, he was high on meth, or, it was a pretty intense thing. And he was trying to kind of get my attention, and I didn't feel particularly safe in that moment. And I started thinking about this. Now I'm a man with white privilege, and I started thinking about this conversation that we're having right now, and now coming full circle and bringing myself into what is that like for a woman on the trail, or a person of color who is in a rural place that is not necessarily filled with other people of color. And man, it hit me again like a ton of bricks. This is the work you're doing. This is to try to make a place that at least psychologically feels safe for people to go to, what I have taken for granted as the ubiquitous ultimate healer for all of us, nature. And I take that for granted as a white person of privilege. Yeah. So, what I want to know is like, how do we do this? How do we provide safe places and safe experiences as allies and as advocates for empathy and for vulnerability and for healing in the outdoors? How do we do this together?
It's a good question. Thank you for saying that and sharing. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it's going to take a community to make this work. Um, you know, and when it comes to that community and working with allies, it's going to take. And I really appreciate what you're saying, but it's going to take more of white allies to go a little deeper within themselves and not be so quick to create a response and give an answer to someone of what they're going through. It's going to take more. It's going to require that person to be disciplined to be able to sit and listen and learn how to listen to their stories. BIPOC has a story. Within that story, they also are giving the community and white allies a very strategic map on what they're dealing with and what they need help with. A lot of times we get very caught up into amping up an answer before the person even finishes their story. It's not about giving answers. It's more about listening. And then when we learn how to listen is when we are able to even come closer together as a community to start building this type of environment. Before we can get there, we need to start listening. Then the process you just shared with me is phenomenal. And it's awesome that you are able to see that. I have faced many folks of white race, especially men, and been challenged. And it goes back to a default. That doesn't exist. I've never experienced that. Okay. So I'm just like, well, if fundamentally, the reason why it doesn't exist is because it's not about you, number one. And number two is fundamentally that you're white and you move through life differently compared to how I would move through life as well. I hate to even bring that up and talk about it, but that's where we are at, and that's where our society is, and that's what we have to deal with.
Absolutely.
Moving forward. That's what we deal with, right? And so these are hard conversations, but they're conversations that needs to be talked about in a very healthy manner and a very respectful manner. And we need to start acknowledging these things, and looking at it, and when that person has that, when that person can that just said that, I've never seen this doesn't happen to me. Well, that person actually needs not to respond to that and realize that it's not about them. They just need to understand and take the time to listen to what this person is saying and have grace. Apply grace to what's happening here. What you're listening to. And empathy and love, right? Because that's loving one another. And again, it's what I said earlier about the ethos warrior. That person who's at a white ally, what Love is King is asking you to do is put yourself to the side and step into this space that's going to make you a little bit vulnerable and allow yourself to listen well to what this person is saying. It may not make you feel good. It may make you feel bad. And that's okay. Because the fact that you are there, you're showing up and you're listening, and that's what's needed to get done first. Once we can start listening to one another, that's when we can start coming together. And now we can start working together to solve a problem, because by you letting down your personal and stepping into that space, you're also opening yourself up of connecting to that person. And guess what? Now you're sharing a love for that person. You're sharing empathy. You're applying grace. And because the fact that what's happening is that you're starting to care for what that person has went through. When you start to care about something, it's just as much important as if I go into the outdoors and I find my moment. When you find your moment, what does that mean? That means you're willing to step up and protect the land. You're willing to step up and protect the fish, right? Same thing here is finding that moment with that person, right? You learn from that person, you find that moment, and guess what? You're not just an ally, but you're stepping in because you want to support that person. You want to protect that person. You're showing your love, and now we can work together because neither one of us don't want to get hurt anymore, right? Neither one of us don't want to,
Yeah.
both of us wants the right thing, and what that right thing is equality, is a safe space, is a bias-free zone, and the both of us feel comfortable, and we can have this awesome engagement of breaking bread together and enjoying our time in nature together. And guess what? We're still strangers. That's the beauty of this, right? And we're still strangers, but we got common ground to where we can work together now, and so, but what I'm saying is, like, I don't have all the answers. Those are really fundamental, but those fundamental things that I just shared is, it's complex. It's hard. It's going to acquire the both parties, either you're on the listening stage or the information stage, the sharing, etc. But it's going to require both people to be vulnerable. Love is going to have to step in on many different levels for one another in order to work together. My grandma used to tell me all the time, it's like, if you have an argument with your girlfriend and it goes really south, love is supposed to step in. If love doesn't step in, then there's a problem, and you will always have that problem. But if it has to get to that point, love steps in. That's what's supposed to happen, And so we have to allow ourselves to allow love to step in for one another on this path here, both ways. Yeah.
I think the perfect cap for this is a quote that you included on your Love is King site from Dr. King. And it goes, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Right. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. To cap off this section, salmon healed me. Like I know nature has healed and continues to heal you and continues to heal us both. What are the mechanics of paying this forward in the context of Love is King? What kind of situations, what kind of programs and ideas are you going to implement that folks can get involved with moving forward? I know you're in the nascent phases of all this, but are there ways that people can get involved?
Yeah, there's many different ways. We have what we call heritage events. I got to update the site a little bit, add this stuff there, but we got what we call heritage events. And heritage events gives an opportunity for white allies to step into a space to help support BIPOC communities of entry into the outdoors. And what we do is we work together collectively, and we identify holidays throughout the year. And these holidays are celebrating holidays of many different people's cultures and lives. And we turn each holiday into a heritage event and give it a theme, entry-level theme into the outdoors. A good example is what this looks like, say, Black History Month, and we have a heritage event happening this weekend. And so at the heritage event, we work collectively with conservation groups and also corporate companies and also individuals. And collectively as a community, we came together and created this interesting called the Matthew Henson Outing Experience. And we're doing it right at the foothills of Forest Park. again, entry level, easy level to easy get in and have a really awesome time. But it's kind of like taking what you go through a natural history museum when you have a guide that's talking about the history, talking about the culture, etc. We lift that up. We leave the walls of the museum there and we apply that into the outdoors. So you come to the trailhead, you have two guides, you have a natural guide that's going to be guiding the team, guiding the people, and then we're going to have a guide like a professor who's knowledgeable about Matthew Henson's life, and he's going to basically tell the story of Matthew Henson. This gives us an opportunity to elevate this figure. It gives an opportunity to celebrate Black History Month and to tell a story while new folks are coming to this space to hike and create a really awesome, interesting experience. And it's all collectively done together. And so we with Nubbs King will sit down on a calendar and work with each partner and identify. We'll do the same thing for LGBTQ celebration. We'll do the same thing for Native American history, et cetera, and on and on and on. But we create these really interesting outings, So we have the Matthew Henson outing, and then we have the Buffalo Soldiers outing, which a lot of people don't know, but they were the first regiment to ride their bikes through the national park. And so we're going to tie that into a single track mountain bike, basically, experience, tied into the history and the storytelling of the Buffalo Soldiers. And then we're going to have the
so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And so it goes on and on. And so that's one thing is we're constantly, this is an actual platform. So it opens itself up to many people, all people who wants to volunteer and support to help create these heritage events. And these heritage events are really focused towards bringing new BIPOC community into the outdoors, creating a safe space for learning, a safe space for creating awesome memories. And we all learn about the stories and the history, et cetera, of that land while we're walking down the trails. And it's a really collectively deeper impact for community growth from a corporate standpoint down to BIPOC community leaders, and we also have what we call stories over silence. And this is this is another way to participate, but it's much more catered towards a more BIPOC, but it is open. But what it is, it's it's really simple. We give out like a go-to 1, 2, 3, 4 step of outline that we want you to speak to, and you just basically use your phone and video record, about the video about your experience in the outdoors tied to welcome access and safety. And it's called Stories Over Silence.
Cool.
And everything. So, and when you record it, we post that. This gives people another opportunity to learn and listen. It takes away the charge from having to, ask questions, et cetera, to that person because they recorded it. But this just basically puts you in a position just to listen and learn from people of color of their experiences. It's called Stories Over Silence, and so those, I just named a couple things, but we're also looking for volunteers to help support on many different levels. It's a new nonprofit and we're growing. Yeah.
It's fantastic. And just so our listeners know, when you're referring to BIPOC, can you elucidate that for us?
Black, Indigenous, people of color.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And we, of course, are going to link to all the work you're doing on our site and at avaswild.com. But just so if folks are driving right now, where can they find your work and how to get involved?
Yeah, so my personal work, I'll just throw this out there. My personal work, my photography is chattelcreative.com. And then my nonprofit number one is soulriverinc.org. You can go, you find all the information you need on that. And then my second nonprofit is loveisking.org. And so you can find that online as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll link to all of that in our show notes and at avaswild.com. But nobody gets out of here without doing the speed round. So here comes the speed round questions for you. Are you ready?
I don't know what a speed round is.
Okay, just a rapid fire coming at you real quick. It's not too mind bending, but basically picture this: your house is on fire. We don't want that, of course. But if it were, of course, you get your loved ones out first. But in addition to them, what's the one physical thing you saved from the fire?
My dog, my service dog.
Of course. My goodness. What's your dog's name again?
His name is Axe.
Right.
Yeah, and by the way, he has his own website.
Well, of course.
Yeah, so anyway.
Is it just axe.org?
It's axtheservicedog.com.
Amazing. My dogs are going to want a website now too. All right, now let's call it your spiritual house. Let's say your spiritual house is on fire. What are the two most important things about your life that you take with you?
Wow, my spiritual house. That I would, if my house is still on fire right now.
Yeah, so if you could take two things that were most important to you in building your spiritual life, your life of integrity, your, mental health life, what are those two things?
Well, Axe is already taken. So I would say my rod and my camera.
Those are important.
Yeah.
I would say the same. Those are big up on my list too. And would you leave anything behind in the house to burn or be purified in the fire?
I would probably, if I had the opportunity to come back, I would take my bows, my archery bows, and then I'll leave everything else as is.
Good enough. Chad Brown, you are always an inspiration and always so fun to talk to. We could go on, and I'm hoping you'll come back another time and we can check in and see how Love is King is doing and see how we can continue to further support your work with Soul River. And I hope we get a chance to fish together one of these days soon.
Yeah, man. That'd be awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, for now, take care. And thank you all for tuning in. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
How do you say what you love? How do you say what you love?
Thank you for listening to Say What You Love. If you like what you're hearing, you can help keep these conversations coming your way by giving us a rating on Apple Podcasts. You can check out photos and links from this episode at avaswild.com. While there, you can join our growing community by subscribing to our newsletter. You'll get exclusive offers on wild salmon shipped to your door and notifications about upcoming guests and more great content on the way. That's at avaswild.com. That's the word save, spelled backwards, wild.com. This episode was produced by Tyler White and edited by Patrick Troll. Original music was created by Whiskey Class. This podcast is a collaboration between Ava's Wild Stories and Salmon Nation, and was recorded on the homelands of the Duwamish people. We'd like to recognize these lands and waters and their significance for the peoples who lived and continue to live in this region, whose practices and spiritualities were and are tied to the land and the water, and whose lives continue to enrich and develop in relationship to the land, waters, and other inhabitants today.